Then you go and you have an activity. Then you meet together as tribes. You have little tribe groups, and you'll like go over some scripture memorization. You'll talk about what the chapel was about, different things like that. Then you have a little free time with swimming and some different things. And they also have a camp store where you can buy food and all that stuff. That's in there. Then we go to dinner. So then we eat again. Then after dinner, we have a campfire and some free time, and that's pretty much the day. You'll have cabin devotions at night, and usually you'll be in bed by, 12? Carrie Ann, what do you think? Carrie Ann was with me all week at camp, and then we go from camp directly into Momentum for another full week. So usually by the end of camp, you're tired and you're ready to go home and sleep, but then you have to get back up and go to Momentum. And Tessa's been going to camp for probably, 20 years. She's been at camp every year, so that's kind of the daily schedule of camp. I have some pictures. Can you bring up the camp pictures? I'll just show you. Let me see if I can click through these. But just kind of, just a little idea of what camp is like. That's our chapel. If you've never been up to camp, it's just kind of this small little quaint chapel we have. And those are some kids. We had kids from Somerset, Stoystown, Myersdale, Summit Mills, Katanning. So we had kids from all over the place going to camp this year. That's where we meet. And that's kind of our camp schedule. This is our camp store, the inside of our camp store. We usually just sell like snacks out of the camp store and kids will come and buy food. That's the pavilion up there where you can just kind of sit and hang out. That's the campfire. I was actually taking those pictures because the camp director had a big container full of something. I wasn't sure what it was. I wasn't sure if it was gasoline, and I was just kind of taking pictures just in case something happened. It was there. This is kind of what happens really late at night when the campers are sleeping. Sometimes the leaders will meet and they'll eat extra food. So breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks later. Oh, that's Finley. Then we're back up at the camp again, the campfire. And the one campfire, I was in charge of it. So I talked the first part of the campfire, and then Carrie Ann got to talk part of the campfire, and Tristan got to talk part of the campfire too. So that's Carrie Ann up there. And there's Tristan. And that was actually on a Wednesday whenever we had our youth group come up to camp and just join us to see what camp was like. So our youth group's up there during that one. And then we have different songs. We sing songs out of this book where we have a lot of emotions, and then sometimes we'll play the piano and have songs. So just a lot of different worship songs at camp. And sometimes you even have injuries at camp, as she was running for a ball and something popped in her foot. So that was her on her crutch, and hopefully she didn't tear anything. And there we are back inside. And then they usually have the leaders come up to help with the worship. And this is in the cafeteria. You can see we're eating nonstop. You probably won't recognize most of those kids because they're from other churches, other places. And then we have activities out in the field. If you've ever been up to camp, we have a big field out there. We have a baseball diamond, they have a sand volleyball court, and different things out in the field. And we were just playing some dodgeball and playing a couple other different games out in the field. All right, so that's it for the pictures. I just wanted to kind of give you an update of actually what we talked about at camp. So a few things we talked about at camp this year. It's funny how camp, Momentum, and different things being taught all kind of come together. They're all very similar. It's almost like God orchestrates them at the same time to be a similar message and similar scripture. Throughout camp, when one person may teach on a different topic, a different verse of scripture, it's like a day later or 2 days later, the next person teaching will be saying literally the same thing that the first person said. It's interesting how God works like that. It happens all the time. But our theme was called Your Life, God's Design. And the first day we just came out at James 4, talking about how our lives are mist, and they appear for a little while, and then they disappear. So we talked about that. Day 2 was Genesis 1, talking about being created in God's image. Day 3 was John 10, just talking about how God wants to give us life to the full, how he wants to be our good shepherd, and how he leads us. On Thursday, we talked about God having a plan for us, and the question was asked, are we truly seeking God with our lives? Are we truly giving him all of our lives and not just, pieces of it? And then lastly, we talked about the wide gate versus the small gate, the broad road versus the narrow road, the path that will lead you to destruction versus the path that will lead you to life. And many will go through this one, and a few will go through this one. So those were kind of the topics in the scriptures that we used for the week of camp. So if you have any questions about camp, talk to one of us afterwards, and we can kind of give you more information about what happened. But we did have some neat things happen. There was at least one salvation. There were a couple rededications of lives. So it's always fun at camp. If you're ever interested in helping at camp, we can always use leaders. And if you like to eat, then come to camp. You'll get lots of food. There's lots of good food. We actually have a turkey dinner, like a Thanksgiving meal one of the days. So, okay. So, do you want to switch to the Momentum video? So we'll let them talk and say a little bit about Momentum. I'm going to give you a rundown of the speakers. There were 9 different sessions, 9 different speakers. Now, if you want to go online, you guys can go online and you can actually watch the full sessions. They're like anywhere from like 1.5 hours to like 3 hours long. So you can go online, they're on YouTube, search Momentum Ministry Partners, and you'll see a whole list of all the sessions. So you can check all that out. You may have to hit the music or the sound.
To rise, can you hear the generations getting louder over time? Every son and every daughter singing out into the night. It's not time to be silent. Don't you dare hide your light. There's a world outside your window. So
That's who you are. You're up at 7 a.m. There is an early morning prayer that's optional at 7:30. Then you head to breakfast. Then from breakfast, we go to this thing called Power Tracks. And Power Tracks, you'll have probably a choice of 10 different places to go where you can go to different speakers talking about different topics and subjects. For example, you might have a girls-only topic or a guys-only topic. So everybody gets to pick where they go. So they go to the Power Tracks. Then we go to the main session after that. That brings us into lunchtime. Now, after the main session, we always meet as a group to discuss our Power Tracks in the main session. So we meet afterwards. Then we would go to lunch. Then after lunch, you have a couple options. You have free time where you can pretty much go around campus and do whatever you want. They have all kinds of games and stuff set up. Or you can go on ministry. So 3 out of the 4 days, we went out on ministry and we did different things. And you saw some of the ministries we were doing. They might talk about that, I don't know. Then after you do that, you come back, you get ready for dinner, you have dinner, then you have a little bit of free time, you go back into another session, the evening session, and that leads us to about anywhere from 10:30 to 11:30 or longer. And then after that, we'll meet as a group, and we'll talk about the day, about the ministries, we'll talk about the sessions, and then we'll get out of our group anywhere from 11:30 to 12 or so. So then by the time they get back and get to bed, you're talking, can it be anywhere, and if they actually go to sleep, like a lot of them stay up. So it could be anywhere from like 12 to 1 o'clock, getting up at 7 o'clock in the morning, and you're tired. Like by Thursday and Friday, people are falling asleep, and you're just like praying for a 15-minute power nap or something. So it's a long, constant week, but it's incredibly encouraging. It works in people's lives. You see God move in all kinds of different ways with the kids that are there, so it's a really neat week. How about we just let them talk and tell you some stuff? Do we have a mic? You want to use that mic? Or that one? The main one? Okay, they'll be up to the mic. Okay, well, I'll let them tell you what they thought about Momentum. Now, actually, before they start, can you pull up the other videos? I knew there were going to be some kids that weren't going to be here, so I actually made them take a little video. I didn't get everybody, but I got a few of them. If you can find that on there, you can look for it. You can do it later. There should be little videos up there.
I'll go first so I can be done. First, I want to thank everybody for their donations and prayers for this week. This is probably my 5th Momentum I've gone as a leader, And this year we took a small group, which there weren't as many kids to go, but I think that we all connected very well, like the leaders and the kids. I think this is probably one of the first times maybe that there weren't any conflicts within the group through the week. Like everybody just got along, no matter who they were. We just all had a really good time. And I enjoyed the van ride down because 3 of the girls in the back with me, they were pretty funny because I would like, when you're a youth group on Wednesdays, you don't really get to connect with everybody that deeply. And this week we got to. So I like that. And I also like the worship because I relate to music. Like I can worship God better through music than like other things. But and Aaron for keeping us up late. They got to see a little bit of April when she's really tired the last night when I got a uncontrolled laughing fit during our group. So everybody got to see that. But that was our week. I just really liked everything.
I guess I'm up next. So I just would like to see a show of hands. How many people have attended our church camp? I thought when Aaron was talking about it, how many people have attended church camp? Oh, okay, how many of you have attended BNYC or Momentum as a student or as a leader? Awesome. I think more of you attended BNYC or Momentum than camp. Anyway, I just wanted to see a show of hands because we have all these things available to us, and I mean, it's such an awesome opportunity for our kids to grow in the Lord. Tess and I went as nurses, and it was a really calm week, thank you, Jesus, because we needed calm, but we had a few issues. And mental health. Mental health is, you hear about it on the news, you hear about it, we see it, we live it. So I'm just gonna ask for prayer for a student named Aiden, not from our church, but he and his leaders and family need lots of prayer, so just be in prayer for them. When Aaron talked about lunch, he didn't share with you that lunch, I mean, we could wait 2 hours to have lunch, but they give us a name tag with a color, so it's color coded. But in the area where we go to the cafeteria, they have lots of vendors, and I prayed that God would just lay on my heart what to talk about. The vendors who are there would be like from Grace College, IWU, Samaritan's Purse, just different places. Assist that we're using, Assist who's going to help us. And this year I took opportunity to talk to some of the vendors, and it is so cool to learn the ministries that they provide, and that our church, our Charis Fellowship supports everything, all those people who are there. So it's really cool to connect with them. We got to connect with Philip Bryant, who will be coming here in October to talk to us about what they do with Assist. But one that touched my heart tremendously is a lady who's there every year. She supports a mission in Thailand called Grow, and they get kids off the street who have been sex trafficked at the ages of like 5 to 8. Parents who sell their children for $5 because they don't have enough money for food. So the stories that you hear and connecting with others, I think we are blinded to what's happening in our world, but it really is happening. So it just burdened me that I feel like we should just be in prayer for all of these people who are there and connect with our kids and connect with us, but just be in prayer for our country too.
Good morning. So my favorite part of Momentum was on Thursday night, Basically, they weren't letting people out of the buildings because of the weather and everything. We were checking the weather app, and it was tornado watch, hail watch, the whole 9 yards. The devil was doing everything he could to try and shut us down. Well, here, long story short, we get to the session, and we're doing worship, and the power went out 2 or 3 times. But each and every time, everyone didn't think twice about just keeping on singing and not stopping their worship. And that was my favorite part. It was really cool to just hear all 2,000 voices just singing to the Lord together.
This was my first Momentum, so I would say overall it was a very good experience. I was able to help Aaron with driving to and from, so that meant I got stuck driving around Columbus, Ohio. But then Aaron was there to help me, and also the good Lord with the traffic circles in Ohio. That was something. But it was very good to see the participation and the engagement of our kids within the sessions. There were over 2,000 participants from what I understand from all across the country. There were folks local from Everett and Hagerstown, but people came from Hawaii. So it was really just good to see, the participation and, like I said, the engagement of all different groups and kids. And, everybody just seemed to get along very well. And it was eye-opening to me because I had never been to any kind of, Christian conference or youth conference before. And I just thought it was a very good experience overall.
All right, my favorite part was probably the fact that we got to serve so much, because normally most churches only go out for one of the 4 days and help clean or whatever the organization or the person needs. And this year we got to go out 3 times, like Aaron mentioned earlier. And we went to the one church that we went to last summer and helped them clean. And it's awesome how grateful they are and how awesome it is that we're able to help them get something done in a couple hours that would take them weeks to do. We went to a farm. What was that called? Victory Acres. And we got garlic out of the ground. That's how I did it. And then had to hang the garlic. And then we had to weed eat. And it was a very good experience talking to the people too that we were serving for, getting to connect with them and talk about their paths of life. And and then we split up the first time we served, we split up into 2 groups where half of them got poison ivy. I'm sure Devin will talk about that. And some of us did some yard work. And I know me and April and Kenna, I don't know who else was there in our group. I think Autumn and Jaden and Izzy. Yeah, we talked to that woman who was telling us about her health issues, and we got to connect a little bit with her and pray with them, and that's always an awesome experience. And I think another thing I really like is whenever we get into our youth group, after session, before lunch, even though we're all really hangry, including myself, we get to connect with the kids and talk about the lessons. And as the week goes on, everyone's opening up a little bit more. And like April said, we're a small group, but I think that this year, that was actually a little bit of a blessing because we got really close to each other. And same thing, getting to meet after session at night, even though it's really late and we're all really grumpy and ready for bed. I really enjoy that time that we get to connect with each other.
Morning. So I can't really point out some specific things that I loved about it because it's just all so fun. I can't really point out a couple things, but one thing was there was a speaker. His name was Mark Clark. I really liked him. He was very energetic and he kept us all awake. And I did need to stay awake that day because I was on Benadryl because I got into some poison ivy or something, and I was all swollen up. And there was a picture up there. My eye was like twice the size it usually is. It was rough, but we're good now. Anyway, Yeah, so he was probably my favorite speaker. The worship is really good there. Yeah, that's about all I got. All the outreach stuff we did, so fun. I just love doing stuff outside. That's about it. Thank you all again for the trip.
All right. I don't know how I can top that. Okay. Something that I loved other than like the sessions and the worship was obviously getting a lot closer with these guys. And I know April mentioned it already. But to me, like before we went to Momentum, it felt like we were just like really close friends. But after we left, it's like we were family and you knew everything about each other. Even like getting closer with the leaders as well, it was really fun. But also, as you can see on our shirts, it's known. So I thought it was really cool to talk about identity and like, because I feel like in today's society, we can easily try to put our identity into the world and to the things that just, it's not where we belong. So it was awesome to, you know, just realize that our identity is in the Lord. So, and thank you guys for your donations and prayers.
Kenna says she loved it and she had fun, and she says thank you to everyone. I'm speaking for her. I was going to give you guys a rundown of all the speakers, but just because it might take a little longer, do we have those other videos up there? So we have just a couple more youth that said a couple different things here.
My favorite part about Momentum was the main sessions. I also thank everybody for praying for me and everything like that.
My favorite part of Momentum was the main sessions.
Take 4.
I think my favorite part of the week was the worship, and I think my favorite speaker was Mark Clark.
So my favorite part about Momentum was the worship and meeting a bunch of new people. Came to this, got a bunch of people to sign it. It was really fun, and yeah.
Okay, so those are just the couple little videos. Tess, you can probably come down here. Tess is going to talk to you guys about Africa, but we do thank all of you for your many prayers, for the incredible support that this church has always given the youth ministry over the years. A lot of these, probably everyone, or most of everyone, went for almost free, I think. There may have been a couple that had to pay a little bit of money, but when you're talking about a conference that costs $500 to $600, and the church supports them through fundraisers, you're talking, $4,000, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000. So, it's very much appreciated. It does change lives. It's a fun trip. If anybody wants to go next year, let me know. We can put you guys on the van, and you guys can drive. Van of friendly faces to Momentum. Let me just say one thing. One of the speakers, and a couple of them already talked about him. His name was Mark Clark. And he talked about God and how power and transformation of our lives comes from God. It's not us. It's not us. We don't do it. And Mark Clark, he has Tourette's syndrome. So he talked about how he would swear and he would say things out loud when he was younger. And then he has tics with his face. He makes all these motions and he would go and breathe and do all these different things while he was speaking to us. And he talked about how, he wasn't even a Christian until he was 19 or 20, something like that. And he said, how could God use me? How could he use me? Look at me. I can't even speak without making some kind of weird faces. And he talked about this, and he was saying, each one of us can be used by God in incredible and amazing ways. Not just these guys, but you guys too. It doesn't matter what you think you can't do, through God, through the power and transformation that he gives us, you guys can do amazing things for the Lord. And he's just one of his quotes here. He said, Satan will use your mistakes and weaknesses to destroy you. And if you think about that, it's those little things, those weaknesses that we have that we think, well, I can't do this. I can't come up here and speak. I can't do that. I don't like to do that. But he was like, if God can do it with me, he can do it with any of you. So, it just kind of reminded me of just our church, and the amazing things that we can accomplish in our communities. Those of you that have jobs, you're out working. Those of you that have maybe families or friends that you meet with that don't know the Lord. Just some amazing things that God can do through you. And then he just kind of finished by saying that, are we living our lives with risk and living our lives on the edge? Are we stepping out for the Lord and asking him to do stuff through us? Or are we just kind of living this comfortable, mediocre Christian life? Are we truly following the Lord, or are we just kind of like, are we just, whatever, I come to church on Sunday? Or are we actually stepping out where we live? Are you being that one person that stands up for God in your place of work, or among your friend group, or wherever you might be? Are you that one person that represents him? And it was really good. He went from this guy that had Tourette's, he went to start a church. God led him to start a church. I think it was in Vancouver. And he just talked about people after people giving their lives to Jesus and baptisms. So it was really cool. So if you have a chance, I encourage you guys to go online, watch some of these. They're really good. There's some good worship. You may even jump out of your seat for some of the worship. I don't know. But there's some good worship, so you guys can check that out. I will pass it over to Tess, and she can talk to you about Africa. But thank you again for all that you do.
Hello? Okay. I'm going to jump down here so that I can see. I have some pictures to share with you. I know this is kind of going long, so I'll try to keep this as brief as I can. But I did have the opportunity in June to go to Kenya with the Summit Mills Church. I kind of invited myself, so I was very thankful that they let me go with them. Kenya's been not Kenya, but Africa in general has been a place that I've really always wanted to go visit. For what reason, I'm not really sure, but I'm very thankful that I had the opportunity to go with them. It was a small group of us that went. I think there's a picture. I don't know if I can, I'm not sure how to work this thing. Well, anyhow, you'll probably see at the end the group of all of us as we got ready to leave. We were super excited, but as I should have known, nothing ever goes as you would expect in ministry, and this trip was no exception. So we left Summit Mills on, I believe, a Thursday afternoon. It was kind of dreary. We got to Finzel. The engine in the van stops. I shouldn't have been surprised, but I was. So the van breaks down. We end up at the way station in Finzel, so we're like an hour behind schedule already. I'm like starting to get anxious. I don't know, those of you who have ever flown, flying in itself is an experience, but then when you're running late, it's even more of an exciting time. So we get to Finzel, the van broke down. Casey Brown went with us. I think you can see her there. Bill Moss also went along. His mom, Judy, Gabe, and myself were the 5 people that went. So Casey's husband came flying from Somerset. We switched cars really quick, put all of our 10 bags in the truck, and off we went to Dulles. For those of you who've never flown from Dulles, it's also an experience, and you also need to make sure you fly from Dulles because we've also made that mistake in the past. But anyhow, that's a story for another day. So we get to Dulles. We're probably an hour and a half, 2 hours early, which is not a ton of time for an international flight. So we're trying to get to our terminal that we need to go to check in. So we finally get to the place, and there's a lot of commotion, and we're like, oh, what's going on? And they're like, oh, this flight has been canceled. And I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. So I guess the pilot must have had an emergency, ended up in the ER. They canceled our flight, and they're like, we have no plans to reschedule it. So at this point, I'm like, take me home, I'm not going, I'm done. I'm like calling Aaron in tears. I'm like, I can't do this. And he's like, it'll be okay. So we ended up staying the night in a hotel in DC. We were supposed to fly from Dulles to Paris, then Paris to Kenya, but we ended up getting a flight to Ethiopia. So that was our trip the next day. So this was us the morning that we actually left. So this is now Friday morning in the United States with all of our 10 bags on the way to the airport. So that's how our trip started. And after that exciting start, I was like, please, Lord, do not let anything more exciting happen because I don't think I can take much more. So here we were on the way to the airport. Here's the plane. Here's a beautiful sunrise we got to see coming into Ethiopia. That flight was about 13 hours. Poor Bill, bless his heart, this was the first time he'd ever flown, and I was like, this poor man's never gonna fly again. I didn't know if he'd get back on the plane to get to Kenya or get back on the plane to come home, but he did, and we were all fine. But it was just really neat to see this come up. I thought it was really pretty. So we finally arrived in Kenya. After about 20 hours or so of travel, we were exhausted. We had not slept. And this was our hotel that we stayed in. This is kind of looking out from our room. It was actually a really nice hotel, kind of like the modern amenities that we have here in the States. So this was kind of our first taste of Africa. However, I will say before we got to the hotel, we waited as, our luggage is coming off the carousel. Poor Casey, her luggage did not make it to Africa. So I was thankful that I was along because I was able to clothe her for half the trip. Her luggage did end up making it 2 or 3 days later. But it was just like one experience after another. So yeah, we finally got out of the airport. And in Kenya, the government, pretty much every system there is very corrupt. They like to be bribed with money, the police, really anybody. They even told us like pharmaceutical companies like to be bribed, and sometimes they won't put the appropriate amount of whatever active ingredient in certain medications unless they have enough money. So you have to be very cautious of what you get. So when we first got there, you have to go through security like a dozen times. And some of the bags that we were carrying with us had supplies for the group in that we were helping. They had Bibles, laptops, and they kind of stopped us when we got in, and they were gonna try to make us pay a bunch of money to them, and they really just wanted bribed, but we ended up they gave him a Bible and he was happy with that, so we got away pretty easily. But anyhow, this is where we stayed. Up the street about 2 blocks was actually a mall. It had like a KFC and a Pizza Hut and a Subway, which was actually very comforting after later in the week. Yeah, this is where we had stayed. And then we spent a lot of our time in the slums. This is the street that we would drive on. It's kind of dirty, lots of people, as you can see, walking on the road. They also drive on the opposite side of the road and the opposite side of the vehicle, which I was thankful that they were driving and not us, because it is a different way of driving there. Very aggressive, and lots of speed bumps. That's kind of their way of speed limiting things. But this is driving through the slums. This is a little shop, lots of shops along the side of the road where they sell everything. These people are very poor. They make maybe $1 or so a day. And so they'll go out and buy dinner for the day when the husband gets home from work, and they'll cook what they need that night. But this was like a medical shop. I thought it was so fascinating. This is where we had church the first day we got there. Gabe preached. They don't normally have a church service, but they did since we were there. They kind of just meet and do like a small group type setting. So we had worship, and then they gave us some Coke and Fanta afterwards, which is kind of their drinks of choice there, which was a treat for them and for us. But there were probably 30 to 40 people there, I would say. It was warm this day. Later in the week, it did cool off down into the 60s, which was surprising to all of us. But here's where we had church, and this is also one of like their headquarters for the Endless Frontier Foundation, which is the ministry that we partnered with. I just thought she was so cute. Everybody drinks Fanta, including little ones on up. This was another part of the slum, just kind of driving through it, just what it looks like. It is very dirty there. They don't have any sort of regulations for trash, sewage. Everything is just kind of everywhere. This was our first day of lunch. After this, I was not sure that I was going to survive the rest of the week. I don't particularly like fish, and I certainly don't like the whole thing. And here in Africa, they don't eat with silverware, so this little, oh no. I hit the wrong button. The white sort of mashed potato-y consistency stuff, it's called ugali, and they use that as kind of a spoon, and you just eat with your hands, pick it up. It's real gummy. Aaron made it. It's called sima. But yeah, that's what we ate. Here is the fish that I ate. Again, there's like no regulations on anything, so it just, is hanging out in the bucket, and they put it in the pan and fry it up and bring it out to you. Here's what their kitchen looks like, open to the side of the street. There you can see the street. Here's where they cook everything. I don't know when it had been cleaned last, but I didn't ask. I didn't want to know. If you ordered chicken that day, like Bill and Judy did, here's where it came from. It took them about an hour to get it to us. I did not try it. I was not interested in that. But the chicken was very fresh. They did later that day allow us to kind of see some of Nairobi, which is the capital city of Kenya. And I think it has about 4 million people. So here we got to go into like an observation tower. Again, no rules on anything. I don't know how structurally sound this building was, and I tried not to think about it as we were going up it. But you take an elevator up, and then you look at this observation deck, and then you take these stairs up to the tippy top where you get this kind of view of the city. It is a very large city, much larger than I had thought it was, but it was neat to just kind of see their culture and just see a little piece of Kenya. It was a really, really pretty city. The next day, Monday morning, we woke up very early at 5:30 to go on a safari. So here's one of our buddies we got to see just kind of strolling down the road. We saw a lot of impala and gazelle type animals, and then some rhinos and a little baby rhino. They're kind of off to the right. Here was our Land Rover that we got to take. You could stand up there in the top. That might have been a buffalo, I'm not really sure. Here's, they kind of talked us into going into this little walk-through zoo afterwards, and there was just a giraffe roaming around, so we took the opportunity to get a picture with it. Then later that afternoon, we got to do some ministry things. So we went to a primary school with little kiddos, and the kids were so respectful. They go to school 6 days a week. So for those of you that complain about school here, it's really not that bad. They go to school for 6 days a week. They go to school from 6:30 a.m. until 6:30 p.m. And they did not complain. They all wear uniforms. These kids were so cute and so interactive when we talked to them. And that also was like the feeding program. They feed those kids, or they feed children at that location every Saturday. So unfortunately we missed that opportunity because we were a day late getting there. This was another school we went to. We had to walk through the slums to get there. That was an overwhelming experience. They tried to prepare us for that ahead of time, but I don't know that anything could have adequately prepared me for the amount of poverty that we had seen. The sewage just kind of runs down the side of the road, so the sights, the smells, there's no like bathroom in the homes. They're like a 10 by 10 lean-to with mud walls and a tin roof, and anywhere from like 4 to 10 people will be living in one of those. They did tell us a story of one of the students that was at their ministry, that she would actually sleep in a chair sitting up holding her younger sister, like in a metal folding chair every night, and that's how she slept. But this is an older school, so for like high school age students, one of the gentlemen that partnered with Endless Frontier, they kind of helped to support this school. This is looking into the slum from the school, so we had walked kind of through there. It's like a labyrinth. I don't know how people find where they live.